guys, Lisa Bove here. No, I am not sick. I know I might not look as lively as I usually do, and that actually corresponds with what I wanted to share today. So lately I've just been, writing stuff down as it's pouring in my heart, and I'm thinking of I should vlog about this and about this and this, and okay, God, like I'll share this and this and that. And then I haven't found the time to do it. And so I caught myself this morning after I dropped Sophie off at school. I thought, oh, I could do a video. And then I thought, oh, no, I usually use my husband's phone because it's like the higher, whatever, better looking videos basically. And then I was like, oh, and I need a haircut. Got to get it cleaned up on the edges, and oh, then I'd have to put on makeup, and I really wasn't planning on like going anywhere today. And then I thought, like that's totally not aligned with like the whole point of why I was doing YouTube videos, right? And so anytime I see the enemy trying to get a hold of something or anything, right, that God is doing in my life, I try to do the exact opposite by ripping the Band-Aid off. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to throw on a hat and walk it out. So anyways, what I wanted to share was very much aligned with what I shared about last time about making sure that we care for people, but we're not caring about what they think. So caring about people, but not about what they think. And just something that had been on my heart. This has been on my heart for quite some time before God even put it on my heart to share. But are we doing things to be followed or to follow, right? So are we following Christ and eyes on him, and that's what's driving our decisions? Or is the enemy getting our eyes off of that and making us do things to have followers, right? And that can be such a sticky situation. I truly do believe that politicians get into politics because they're like, I want to change the world and I want to make change. And then when we see like all these scandals that come out and people like lying and cheating, I really do feel like this person had this dream to change the world in whatever capacity God put in their heart, but then the enemy tries to steal, kill, and destroy that dream and just the magnitude that their actions could have in a good way. And he comes in and gets their eyes off something and gets them to being greedy or to lying about stuff to be liked or tempt them in whatever way. And I think that happens even on a smaller scale. And by that, I don't mean that our calling is less than if we're not like in the limelight, but just like things where you think like, oh, well, I only affect a couple people, but our ripple effect is like boom, right? Like you can be a receptionist, you could be working at a gas station, or be a teacher, or whatever capacity that you are used in. Your ripple effect is so great. And when we keep our eyes on God, we do kingdom work through our ripple effect. When we don't, we're just not doing kingdom work. So just making sure that we're keeping our eyes on God. And early on when I started blogging, I was like, hesitant because of what people would think, right? And I still struggle with that. Every single time that I have posted a blog, I always have to like push through the insecurities and really get my eyes on who God calls me to be, who God says that I am and what I'm meant to do, and just really break away the chains of just insecurity and what people think and what's popularly unacceptable or what's popularly, acceptable. So I'm just really making sure that I'm not getting stuck in the world. And that's an everyday challenge, because we live in the world. And so even though we're not of this world, we have those temptations, right? And so very early on, when God had put on my heart, like, don't look at likes, don't look at follows, don't look at now subscribers, don't look at any of that. Okay, if you see it, great, but keep it moving. Like, don't buy into the lies that the enemy will come and try to attack you with. And that could be if it's like not a lot of followers, or if it is, right? Because if it's not a lot of people who are following or liking, he can build into that insecurity, right? The enemy can build into that insecurity. But then if it is a lot of likes and follows, then the enemy can build into that pride. So both traps of the enemy. And I just think that when God told me that, he saw, and I don't think it's bad for other people. Like if you're like, oh, well, I always tell people like follow and subscribe. I don't think that that's bad. I'm just saying, just do a heart check and make sure that that's not what's feeding you. And it truly is God and fulfilling what he's calling you to do, and not like, oh, look, people are loving me, right? And I do think that when you follow what God's called you for, you just have this light that emanates from you, and then people are drawn, and that's fulfilling like us having, making disciples of people and letting them know about the kingdom, and not even necessarily talking about God. Like you can just be love wherever you work at, and you're like, well, I can't mention God, or that makes me feel awkward, or whatever the case might be. But you being love and people seeing that and being pulled into that, and then also them being positive, that's kingdom work right there, right? So anyway, so God had early on told me like, hey, don't worry about that, this and that. And I thought I was doing pretty good. Like I was like, yeah, like, I'm blogging, and even though every single time I'd have to like push through, like by the time I'd finish writing, I would just be like so hesitant, and through frustration, I'd be like, whatever, I don't care, and post it every single time. And one night I had stayed up because I usually would do it after Sophia and Brian were asleep, and so I had stayed up. And I was like, okay, like I'm gonna like, I feel God on my heart to share this. Okay, I'm just gonna stay up and do it. So I spent over 2 hours writing up, editing it, and again, getting insecure and going, well, this is too long, or this is the blah, blah, blah. Finally, I'm like, I don't even care. And God's like, would you just shut your mind up and like let me flow through your heart? And so I'm like, okay. So I post it. 2 days later, I think like 4 people read it. And I was just like, I was so tired that night. I stayed up, like surely this was going to be a post that like everybody read, right? And I could just feel that parent look from God, like, really? Like, we've talked about this, like, better. So I'm like, I know. It's, it's just trusting you, and that it's for whoever it's for. Maybe it's for me. Sometimes I read back through my journal and I know that's God speaking through me. And so God's speaking through to me through my own journal post. And so I'm like, okay, well, I go on Facebook and I see that somebody had posted underneath where I shared that blog post, and it says, thank you, Lisa, for sharing. God gave you the words to my pain today. And I started sobbing. I got it. God just was like, do you see? Like, it's not the quantity, it's the quality, right? And I would have stayed up in the wee hours of the morning, over 2 hours, talking to that person. They had also lost a child very later on in life. The child was much older. And then, I lost Nicholas when he was 1 day old. So their child was young adult. They lost their child very tragically, just in just such a horrible way. And I never would think that I could speak to their pain. But the awesome thing about God is that he can. He knows their pain so intimately. And so he will use you if you'll allow him to bring comfort to people that you think like, oh, I could never, help that person out. And it was so humbling that even through my self-centeredness, when I finally pushed through, he was able to speak through me and bring comfort to that person that day. And so that really showed me like, oh, wow. So anytime I start getting caught up, I think back to that. And then I'm back. I'm good. I'm like, okay, I don't care. I'm just going to walk, God. And so that's one thing. Then recently, so this is like a year ago that happened. Then recently, I saw a post on this. It's like a support page for moms who have lost babies in the NICU. And I usually don't read it too much. I just pray for them, but I don't read too many of the details because sometimes it just gets my heart really heavy. And so I read one of the posts for whatever reason, and my spirit was just like, oh my gosh, she needs to know. So I'm like, please excuse my ranting. I told her, I was like, but I'm just passionate about like the enemy trying to come in and lie to people. And so let me remind you who God is, this and that. So I write this really long post, I post it, and then my mind went to that post I wrote a year ago. And I thought, I should share that with her. And then immediately I'm like, am I trying to self-promote? Oh, am I trying to like, be sneaky and say, oh, it's going to be okay here. Why don't you read my book? I don't have a book out yet, but still, it's like, and again, I was like, you know what, God, nope, I'm just going to go ahead and share it with her because I don't want to miss a chance of you trying to speak to her. And I'm, again, getting caught up in my head, overthinking stuff. So I went ahead and shared with her. A couple days later, I see that she responded and she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, you made my day and this and that. And again, just humbled and being like, okay, God, I get it. We might not see the magnitude of our actions, even in this lifetime. It might be after we were in heaven, and that's okay. We just need to trust that what God's calling us to do just has this immense purpose, and walk courageously and confidently in that. And you don't know even through your children who you're raising up. And so you might be like, well, I don't really do much. I mean, like, I have my kids, but that is huge. Like, who we raise our kids to be, that is huge, because I truly do believe that even if your kid strays and starts doing who knows what, when knows what, it doesn't matter if you've put some principles in there, like those will resurface. So that's pretty much it. Just be careful. Facebook and Instagram and all social media, it's good, but I'm sure you've seen that it could be a trap. And so most of the times I don't even scroll down my news feed. Sometimes I will, and I'm like, I shouldn't have. And then other times I'll scroll down and I'm like cracking up at like just funny memes and stuff. So I try to use discernment, like when it's just like, no, just don't, just check messages and post what you need to post and then get off. But even if you have a Facebook or Instagram or anything that's not a personal page, it can be super challenging to keep your eyes off of like likes and follows, because as a good marketing tool, they reach out to you and say, hey, this post has been viewed 80% more than your other post. Go ahead and boost it like for $2 or something, boost your Facebook post, and your followers have not heard from you in this long, blah, blah, blah. So I try to hurry up and skim by that and ignore that. They send like a Facebook report, or maybe it's Instagram. Anyways, they send a weekly report to my email, and I'm like, delete. Not that it's bad to look at those if your heart is, like super free and you're just like, oh, I look at that because, God told me like keep my eye on the business and this and that, then listen to God, right? But I know God has told me keep your eyes off of likes, follows, subscribers, all of that stuff. Just be obedient. So keep me in prayer that I just can keep my eyes off of that. And I think that's all. So have a wonderful weekend, and remember to keep believing when it's beyond reason to believe. Bye.